fan of yours.
Hey Dan, we're missing you over here. I don't know why you're not here.
Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, back for our third consecutive race review in a row. It's been a bit of a chaotic stretch. I think it's third in a row. We've got our fourth next week, so chaotic stretch at the minute. It is almost over, which, as weird as it sounds, I do kind of want this chaotic stretch to be over because I do want a bit of time to breathe. But we're back to review the Indy Toronto. Quite a fun weekend. One of the more chaotic ones we've had this season, which is always fun because Toronto hasn't always been a source of chaos, but this one certainly was this year. And I've got to say, the listeners must be absolutely loving it. The prospect of this episode with an award victory and a VeeKay podium. You couldn't make this up. Any long-time listeners of the show will be yearning for this episode. They will be desperate to hear our thoughts on this race, and what a cool feel-good podium with Kyffin Simpson in third as well. So, listeners, you're in for a treat this week, I think is the best way we can say it.
Sweet taste of vindication, I think is the way that I would put it. That was that was quite something. As you say, a very feel-good result. I feel like award winning always is cool, just because obviously the fan base and the popularity that he has behind him, and the first win that Zach Brown has actually been in attendance for, which kind of shocked me. But obviously VeeKay, after all he's been through the last year or so, is very, very cool to see him and this resurgent Dale Coyne Racing team finish second, back on the podium. And Kyffin Simpson too, after kind of all the doubts that there were surrounding him and the kind of unexpected season that he has had this year. Very impressive. It was, as you say, I think I described Iowa a bit like this, but it was another kind of wacky and weird and wild race in 2025, wasn't it? I mean, I actually thought the racing at points was properly good. Like, we had some really good side-by-side, pure IndyCar street course racing.
Well, what I was going to say is, do you remember before the 500, we were crying out for about 4 races for a caution?
Yeah,
and it feels like every race we're getting about 6 now. It's ridiculous. It's like you have a set amount of cautions over the year, and they've just devised them a little bit weirdly this year, and they're all coming in this mid-pack. So it must be so much racing, and drivers have just decided to go, screw it. We're just going to have fun. And to be fair, I think because the championship standings have been so weird this season, is that literally nobody's got anything to lose. I mean, I know Penske's, for example, they've got nothing to lose at this point. Palou's not really got anything to lose. Well, he does, but it would take an absolute miracle for him to lose it. And Award, by the way, is something like 74 points ahead of third place now. So you've got Palou, who's got this massive gap to Award. Award has got this massive gap to Kirkwood. So
what a strange old season Award has had, because I feel like for ages he was kind of third, but we were a bit confused how he was third. And now he's obviously had this very strong stretch with the two wins in 3 races with his Iowa victory. And this has happened very suddenly that he has this massive gap. I did not know that was the case. I would not have guessed that was the case.
Really weird, isn't it? I mean, Kirkwood lost a lot of points relative to Award in Iowa, and it's because Dixon jumped in, and Dixon didn't have a great weekend this time around. So because those two keep on tripping up in alternate races, Award somehow just moved himself into second in the standings. So bit of a weird one. I mean, thank goodness the off-season is so long, so we have time to diagnose how we got where in the standings, because I still don't know. We're gonna need a while to dissect how Award somehow got a 74-point lead over Kirkwood. How, I don't even know where people are. Like, Simpson's like 13th now after his podium, which is pretty strange. I think he's only 1 place behind my champion pick of McLaughlin. So do you remember we tried to predict the standings from 27th to 1st?
Oh, that's going to be really fun.
I am terrified of the results of that. Like, we are going to be so embarrassed by so many of these, aren't we? I'm terrified of having to review those predictions.
They were good predictions at the time. It's just been a very strange season.
Exactly, that's it. So I don't think points for that one will be going particularly high, but yeah, I'm terrified of that. Listeners, if you want an early insight in our preseason predictions episode, we make a big thing of we don't listen back to our preseason predictions. We obviously remember some of the ones we made, but we won't find out about them until we've recouped them in September. So anyway, that's concerningly close still, isn't it? We're only 6 weeks marrying to do that.
Yeah, this time next week we'll be reviewing the 4th fast race of the season and looking ahead to only having 3 left, which is, well, don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, let's change the topic very quickly. Let's change the topic to Pato O'Ward, who claimed his 2nd victory in 3 races, his 9th of his career. One of the most impressive of his career, I think, actually. It was a strange one where he was obviously hugely helped by the strategy, but he did make the right moves at the right time. And we said this quite a lot about O'Ward on the podcast, that he hasn't qualified amazingly. He keeps on transferring to the fast 12. There's absolutely no problems with that. But transferring to the fast 6, he's still only done it once this season on the Brown Street courses, which is rather unlike him. And he keeps on saying it's forcing me to do recovery drives on Sunday. But yesterday, there was a bit of a confidence, despite qualifying 10th, of, okay, the ultimates didn't work for us, but this is going to be a black race, and we are really good in the blacks. And obviously, got off the blacks for lap 2, the first opportunity. McLaughlin crashes, perfect for O'Ward. Then the second stint, pits just before Rossi crashes, and from this point onwards, he's in the box seat. Still made some huge moves on the likes of Will Power, Connor Daly, Kyffin Simpson, overcut Rinus VeeKay at the end to claim what was a victory by quite a decent margin toward the race end there. So huge credit to O'Ward, made the moves when needed to. Sure, he got a bit lucky with strategy, but Palou did last week, and others like Dixon did at Mid-Ohio. So you got to make the strategy work, and O'Ward certainly did that. So yeah, nice result for O'Ward. It's been a bit of a quiet season, it felt like, we've said a few times, and some as we said, he's got a 74-point gap to second in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 big things that stand out for me. It's that latter point that you made, that in a way it has been quite a quiet season from him. But in the past, we've been a bit critical of some of the peaks and troughs that we've seen from O'Ward. He's, I always remember that stretch in 23 where he really threw away a few results and then actually came good towards the end of the year, but then it never quite translated then to 24. And I feel like this year is just a new, much more polished and clean version of Pato. I don't know what to attribute that to. Maybe it is just a pure change in approach. I know he's spoken over time about the fact that he can't necessarily drive the car as much on the edge with the hybrid. So maybe it is he's kind of toned it down a bit, become a little bit more measured, and that's helping. But certainly seeing a lot more consistency and a lot more reliability from him. And I think, yes, okay, qualifying has not been where it was, but in the past, there were times where he'd qualify really well and he wouldn't necessarily convert the race results. So I think it's much better doing it this way around. If he can combine the 2 in next season, brilliant. But I think these are positive signs on that front. And I think the second point is, okay, maybe there was a bit of fortune, but I don't think we've really seen this level of kind of decisiveness from Aaron McLaren on a strategy front enough, really, in the past. I think a lot of the time they've been criticised for doing some slightly funky looking strategies, whether they've just got unlucky or what have you, but they kind of stuck to their guns, committed to what they were going to do. Pato said that no matter kind of the amount of yellows that fell, they weren't going to half-arse a strategy, and they were going to commit to what they were intended. And another quote I quite like from him, he basically said, "F a top 10, we can win." And I like that. It's a bit of a newfound confidence in the fact that they can really execute on a race day. And
I saw this really interesting stat on Twitter that O'Ward's current points tally, he'd have a 29-point lead over Palou at this point last year. How weird is that?
Yeah, that's
so
mad.
Strange. Really
strange. Palou, I think, was less than 30 points behind his tally last year heading into Toronto. I guess he's more or less around it now with 4 races remaining, which again speaks to the impressive season that he has had, because last year it was tight. Like, another interesting nugget was that Colton Herta was, he finished 31 points behind Palou last year as runner-up. He was coming into Toronto 271 points behind, which already mathematically wipes him out of contention with 5 races to go, which is crazy, really, considering I guess just how tight last season was. That was, I thought, just a pretty interesting little nugget.
Last week, we were working on Palou could win the championship, and we were like, well, it's a pretty terrible track for O'Ward, pretty decent track for Palou. And suddenly, we said he could have won it in Laguna. He can't now. You still feel like he'll need an 108-point gap leaving Portland, so he needs to get 9 points over 2 of his best tracks over O'Ward. So we're probably looking at Portland now. Award thinks he isn't done yet, but I think you're relying on Palou getting a DNF really at either Laguna or Portland, and hoping that Award wins both of Milwaukee and Nashville to have it. It's not completely impossible, but it would still take quite the collapse from below for that to be the case. Really, I think
it's an interesting point you make actually as well, that this has never been a track that Aaron McLaren have done well at, but they seem to solve some sort of problem and really found some pace, at least on O'Ward's side. I know Siegel and Lundgaard were both actually knocked out of the first round in qualifying. And yes, okay, we've said O'Ward wasn't brilliant in qualifying, but they really seem to unlock something at that track that they'd never found in the past. I think O'Ward had pretty much said it was his worst track. So yeah, that's a positive sign as well. And they continue to kind of cement themselves really as the best Chevrolet team at the moment. Obviously Penske, it's not all performance. There's been a lot of bad luck there, but yeah, I think Aaron McLaren probably have had the edge this year, regardless of Penske's.
It's not AJ Foyt Racing like you're trying to claim.
No, that was
whatever it was.
That was a flash in the pan.
What I would also say, it's the second time this season that I've come into a weekend thinking Lundgaard's going to be on top of O'Ward this weekend. So the Lundgaard track, Lundgaard is really going to continue his form over O'Ward and really continue to prove he's the top dog of road street courses. His first time was the Indianapolis road course. Once again, the second time I've really backed Lundgaard, it sort of let me down a little bit. So I thought that was strange. The tracks Lundgaard has historically gone well out of RLL, he's actually kind of struggling at. And the tracks he didn't go great at RLL, he's actually doing quite well at Aaron McLaren, which is a bit weird, but yeah, another bit of a disappointing weekend from Lundgaard. It feels like when we expect him to do well, he doesn't, and when we don't expect him to do well, he does. So, strange case there. But I mean, every time Lundgaard gets a podium, the discussion comes up, is Lundgaard the top dog? He's certainly not, and I think results like that prove that. But generally, I think the challenge is good for O'Ward, where, okay, Lundgaard isn't challenging him week in, week out, but he's having a proper competition with somebody who is on his pace once every 2 or 3 weeks, which is more than he was getting with any other team.
Yeah, ultimately, O'Ward has reacted extremely well to the challenge, very quickly reacted extremely well. I know there was obviously that talk after Lundgaard's kind of streak of podiums start the season that, oh my God, maybe he's really unsettling Pato, but no, Pato's stayed really calm, it seems, calm, composed, and really responded well to it. And yeah, Lundgaard's maybe just got a few inconsistencies. I feel like he needs to eradicate a little bit, but at the same time, he's still fifth in points. And okay, it's a very drawn out kind of in terms of the gaps within the top 10 this season. But at the same time, like, he is still challenging O'Ward more than anyone. And yeah, that point that just O'Ward has reacted well to it. And I mean, Lundgaard was driving like an absolute madman at the end of that race. I don't know what he was doing, but final 10, 15 laps, he was just like having contact with everyone. He was having contact with the wall. And I've never really seen that from him. I always think of him as very measured and methodical, a bit like in that sort of Palou school. So that was a bit weird. And also, I kind of feel for Nolan Siegel, because this is now, the third race that he's had this season that he's had an accident towards the very end. And this time it wasn't really his fault, because Rosenqvist just had an almighty moment in front of him and ran into the back of him. That was 3 laps to go, I think. So that was
when I saw the camera with no context, I thought, oh no, once again, there's an Aaron McLaren crashed when O'Ward was leading. It's going to potentially cost him a race win, because it is a really common theme of his teammates crashing when he's heading towards a race victory. So I thought that was amusing. Thankfully, for O'Ward's sake, 1, it wasn't Siegel's fault, and 2, there wasn't enough laps to go for them to restart it. So anyway, that was amusing for about 0.1 seconds.
Yeah, good to see Siegel back though and cleared after his concussion. Apparently, I think O'Ward said on Connor Daly's podcast, Siegel actually flew back himself. He flew because Siegel's got a pilot's license. He flew on Sunday night, so it can't have been too bad a concussion. But yeah, there were points where Siegel was looking all right. He did out-qualify Lundgaard, actually. He was pretty... I think, yeah, Siegel was just on the brink of making the Fast 12. I think he was 7th in that first group. So again, he is showing decent pace. It's just about getting to the finish. And I do feel sorry for him, because this one was completely not his fault.
Okay, we'll move on to your buddy, Rinus VeeKay, who takes a 2nd place for Dale Coyne Racing. Their first podium since Malukas took one in Gateway 23. Their first on the road straight, I think, since Grosjean and Laguna 2021, I believe. him and Simpson were both left out in the opening caution on alternates, and everyone at the time was like, "What on earth are they doing?" I don't really know how it ended up working out so well for them because they were dropping like flies during that period. So I'm not sure how they both ended up second and third, but that was How? How?
How many did they stop? Did they both do a two stop? They must have both done a two. I'm not entirely sure actually. I think they both ended up doing a two stop. Yeah, I mean at the time when they were both kept out, I was like, I mean, what are you doing? You're ruining both of these races really, because VeeKay had qualified 9th, which was pretty good going, and at the time I was a bit like, I mean, what are they doing? Because they were dropping like stones. I mean, that was part of what caused some of the absolute bonkers racing at the start, was that you had VeeKay and Simpson basically driving on ice on these alternate tyres, which, by the way, are just, they need to be fixed for next year. I appreciate that Firestone are trying to make a disparity, but they're not even raceable. They're that soft, which, I mean, it just negates the point of the tyre even existing, really. So yeah, that was that. But they actually, to be fair to them, as much as they took a lot of pain, extended to the extent that they reduced what probably was on paper a 3-stop race to a 2-stop race, and kind of really ended up on the podium on merit. I mean, VeeKay was pretty quick all weekend, and yeah, took that pain there, and it really paid off. And he was ahead of O'Ward heading into that final stop. Was obviously overcut. I think VeeKay said that actually O'Ward had less fuel to take on, which was where the difference ended up being there. But yeah, can I talk in more wider terms about VeeKay now? Have I got permission to go on a wee monologue?
Oh, this podcast needs to be under an hour. Some things. Gotta be careful.
I mean, I went back to find my original VeeKay monologue, which was in our season review last year, which was off the back of it felt like a bit of a resurgent year with Ed Carpenter Racing, because 2023 had been extremely difficult for that team, and VeeKay in his first 3 years in IndyCar had been so impressive. I mean, as a rookie out of the gate, he was rapid. I think he ended that season towards the back end of that rookie season with a pole and a 3rd place on the Indy Road Course, and then went into his second season, went from strength to strength, became the first winner for Ed Carpenter Racing since Newgarden. But I don't know, after that point, he was really being touted for some of the biggest teams in the series, but 23 went so poorly, and not really VeeKay's fault. The team just really faded and had a very difficult year. And his name kind of just stopped being bandied around in those circles. And he very quietly had a really, really strong 24 for an Ed Carpenter Racing team that still felt like it was trying to find its feet. I mean, he got 7 top 10s, which was actually the most he'd ever got in his career in a single season, which, by the way, he has now matched this year with 4 races still remaining, which is very good. But yeah, I just feel vindication really for backing VeeKay so staunchly, and it's been a hell of a turnaround, because I mean, he had 4 months in the off season. I know there was a bit of an ongoing relationship there with Coyne, having done the test on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval for that hybrid test they had in October. But he was still not signed until, I guess, I don't think we ever found out for sure, but kind of end of Jan, early Feb was when he seemed to sign. I know he was at that thermal test with Abel, which was end of January, I believe. But yeah, I mean, it's just so impressive, because coming into the season, expectations for Dale Coyne Racing, try and make the leaders circle, really. Yet here we are with 4 races remaining. VeeKay's 11th in points. His best in his career is 12th. Obviously, that whole thing I made a whole point of, finishing no lower than 14th, but no better than 12th. And here he is. And for a team, we thought, okay, if they make the leaders circle, this is a success. VeeKay could now genuinely finish in the top 10 in points. And to be fair, I don't know when the last time a Dale Coyne Racing driver did that. I mean, it's got to be quite a while ago. So yeah, I mean, I feel like there were signs of this level last year. It was very abrupt when he was kind of unceremoniously released by Ed Carpenter Racing, because I know he was out of contract, but there seemed like there were assurances that maybe he'd continue, and it was very late in the day that he did end up being let go. And I mean, yeah, he only had a month, not even a month, to prepare with Coyne and go and hit the ground running in St. Pete, finish 9th. And they've really not looked back since then. I know Barbary was probably a lap away from having a podium, so Toronto just feels like he's got his reward for, well, it's been just a stunning turnaround, I think, as a team leader. I mean, we spoke last week about how Abel's spoken so highly of the support he's got from VeeKay, and I mean, he's just been totally transformative for a team that was really an ailing operation last year.
I have found the last coin driver in the top 10 of the standings.
Okay, go for it.
Sebastian Bourdais.
What year was that?
2018. And do you know what Sebastian Bourdais did in 2018?
That overtake at Long Beach?
That overtake at Long Beach. Any opportunity to get that overtake into the show, that overtake is so good, it still deserves to be spoken about 7 years later. It's got nothing to do with this race, but if you've never watched this overtake, after this episode, get straight on YouTube and watch this overtake. But I better say more about Rinus VeeKay because, yes, I mean, I will still never admit publicly that he's having a good season was the right move to coin, because that'd be embarrassing for my ego on this podcast. However, I thought he drove very well once again. And yeah, it made the strategy work despite falling like a stone in the opening stint, which proved to kind of accidentally be a masterstroke in the end. So fair play. It feels a bit weird to say, but it also kind of feels like this podium was coming. It felt like, I mean, he was very close at Barber, wasn't he, to getting third. And it says quite a lot that this isn't really a huge surprise that VeeKay's on the podium.
And I mean, when you consider that this team had no race result better than 13th last year, that's astonishing. The fact that he's been in the top 10 7 times is, I mean, it's quite a feat, really, to have turned things around that quickly.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And he now lies ahead of 2 Penskes in the standings and 11 points off the third. A similar story for Kyffin Simpson, a third, friend of the podcast, and it is great to see Kyffin Simpson do well, because I feel like you've been a big advocate for Rinus VeeKay. I don't say I feel like you have been a very big advocate for Rinus VeeKay, but I feel I'm becoming a bit of an advocate for Kyffin Simpson this season. I mean, I said it in my mid-season review, and he's backed me up last couple of races, and for the first time, an IndyCar podium, and I felt like he should have done it in Mid-Ohio. That made a mistake there. But I think the other thing about Simpson is this isn't really a huge surprise. It's, okay, well, cool, Kyffin Simpson's on the podium. I wasn't expecting that, but it's not a massive shock. And if you said 12 months ago that Kyffin Simpson would be on the podium, you would think, oh, I'll take some ridiculous luck or some crazy strategy or everybody to crash out. It would have taken some absolute miracle. But I don't think this really was one. I think he's holding his own really well, and he's definitely got a lot of work still over. His Bone Street courses, Simpson is right up there. Like pace-wise, he isn't too far off Dixon, for example, on occasion. And this was another example of him actually showing quite well. Qualifying-wise, he qualified 13th, which is, again, big improvements on what he was doing last year. That would have been his second best qualifying of the season last year. And that's sort of now a regular performance for him on Bone Street courses. And again, he's executing strategies well. They're putting him on these sometimes audacious strategies because he is capable of pulling them off, which last season he wouldn't have been able to do so. And, you know, like he was this weekend, Carlton Hurst could have easily gobbled him up at the end, but he held his own once again. And it's a real coming of age year for Simpson. And last year he did feel inexperienced and out of his depth. But this year, the development he's made has been really, really substantial. You compare him to Nolan Siegel, who I know is a first full season, but he's sort of a second-year driver, or Stingray Robb, for example. There's other drivers who haven't made a step up with their second season. But he genuinely looks like a completely different driver to what he was last season. It's really great to see that he's got a podium because he deserves it because of the progress that he's made this season. So a lot of credit for Kyffin Simpson.
Yeah, I think I expected a little bit of a step forward this year. Obviously, his second year, Ganassi going down to 3 cars, really focusing their resources rather than being stretched a little as they were last year with the 5 entries and maybe some cars getting a little bit more neglected. But I didn't expect this much of a jump forward. And I mean, I guess naturally, because Simpson came in not with the greatest pedigree, didn't have the most phenomenal results in Indy Next, but at the same time, I was always willing to cut him some slack because he's extremely young and he is extremely inexperienced. And I think what we are seeing here is probably the huge development program that he's been put under, whether that's, going and driving sports cars, going and testing old F2 cars or GP2 cars, I think it was. And that's clearly helped. But also, he's clearly put in so much work to improve and get to this point. I'd like to speak to him really to find out exactly what he's been doing to make this massive step forward. But we've spoken about last year. He was qualifying in the 20s pretty much every race, bar that strange Road America wet dry session, and just didn't seem to have the pure pace. And this season, he's just made a massive step forward in a really, really short space of time. And racecraft as well. He's racing well. And as you say, he's holding his own when he gets into these positions. There may be times he fortuitously gets in, like Long Beach, for instance, when he found himself in the top 10. That wasn't necessarily, okay, he's raced his way there. But when he gets there, he holds his own to stay there. And so, this year he's got 5 top 10s under his belt and 3 of them have been top 6s. And as you say, okay, it's probably a bit unexpected in being on the podium this year, but actually in the scheme of the way that the year has gone for him, not a major surprise. He's really, really, really come into his own. I'm very impressed because when you've got Scott Dixon and Alex Palou as teammates, it can be very, very easy to get a little bit embarrassed, but I don't feel like he has at all this year, and still really young and still a lot of development ahead. So I think his ceiling's a lot higher than a lot of people said, and I think this is really sweet because a lot of people doubted him and just said he was there for the money. And I know that's a big part. I think Mike Hull said that the other week, but it's not the only part. They've invested in him since very young, Ganassi, and they've really seen this potential, and it's starting to come to fruition. And this does feel like it's only the start of, an even greater trajectory, I feel.
Are you ready?
For what?
The DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast weekly Penske disaster review.
Oh,
how could it not be? It is a weekly segment of this podcast, and yes, once again, it's a disaster. It's never a disaster on one car, is it? It's a disaster on all 3 of their cars, and that was once again the case in Toronto. In fairness, once again, they're still not qualifying. I say they're not qualifying very well. They're qualifying pretty hideously again. McLaughlin was 14th, which isn't terrible, but he can do a lot better. Newgarden was 18th, which isn't superb. Till Power was 4th, but Newgarden in particular has been qualifying pretty horrendously.
And what I would say as well, they looked really quick in practice this weekend. So something didn't work out in qualifying. I think McLaughlin said he'd made a mistake. And again, it's just these little bits of execution lacking in a way that we're not used to from Penske. They seem to have the pace, they just weren't knitting it all together again.
So we'll start from McLaughlin. Came out the pits, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, lost his rear left wheel nut straight into the barrier. Nothing he could do, so he was gone after 2 laps. So really nothing he could have done there. And you look where Ward ended up, McLaughlin could have well been on the podium, or at least not very far off it. So that's a big loss. Newgarden, obviously, this one again, not his fault. His luck is catastrophically bad. Can you name one time Newgarden that's had even the slightest bit of luck this season? Because I can't. I can name about 10 times he's been absolutely screwed over by no fault of his own. And this was the latest one of them where he's screwed over. Basically the innocent victim, and Jacob Abel's, wasn't even Jacob Abel's fault really. It was Louis Foster making a move with Jacob Abel not expecting it, crashing, and Newgarden hitting him as he tried to get around him. So not Newgarden's fault once again. And that is now 4 DNFs in his last 6 races, and the other 2 were his Iowa luck, which might have been the worst luck of all of them. It's actually 5 and 8 DNFs now. So it's just laughably bad. There's literally nothing else we can say about Newgarden's season apart from I hope he has a better 2026 because I feel terrible for him.
I just can't even imagine what he must be thinking. When you think you've seen every way for him to end up out of a race or out of contention, something new happens. He's been out of a race because he's been upside down. He's now been out of a race because someone's ended up on top of his car.
Louis Foster must be his enemy at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was kind of a bit of a racing deal because Abel, I mean, he just didn't defend at all on the Lucas and just left the door open, and then wasn't expecting Foster to pass and kind of looked like he locked up a bit, slid into the wall, and I mean, it was a bit like the Ferrucci one last year. That's the second year in a row we've seen that exact part of the track, a car ending up airborne. It wasn't quite
the
as
year
dramatic
before
as that
that. We had the pile up on the opening lap.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So. Yeah, I mean, then you had a right thing as everyone was checking up. I think Siegel ran into Armstrong maybe, and I spun Di Francesco, and a whole kerfuffle. But yeah, I mean, we've just exhausted everything you can say about Newgarden. Really, just it's. I think the word I'll just keep using from now on is bewildering because I can't really wrap my head around it because none of this is really the driver's fault. Like, if you think of all of the instances of Penske having a disaster this year, I don't know, you can probably attribute, 20% of it maybe to being the driver's fault? But here you are.
Newgarden was Road America was the only real one, which was his fault.
Yeah, and I know he's obviously not at the pace at all times, but...
we haven't found out what happened at Mid-Ohio either, actually.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird one. But here you are, McLaughlin, this was... I mean, I don't know if the wheel nut failed or if it wasn't attached. I think one of his crew members looked pretty dejected. So again, that's maybe another Penske just executing.
They're not Penske perfect because there keeps on being way too many issues from a team side. Sure, the drivers are making errors, but a lot of their DNFs have been caused through mistakes from the team, and they must now have more DNFs than we've had races this season.
Yeah, I was just about to say McLaughlin's DNF. I think he's DNF 5 times this season. I think he said it's been the toughest year of his career, which is I mean, he's had a long career, hasn't he, at the top? So that's really saying something. And I mean, he looked dejected. I think credit to him. I mean, he was properly classy in his interview. It could have been very easy to just throw the team under the bus and say there was a mistake, but he rallied behind the team and in this moment of yet more brutality. But here we are. McLaughlin, our title pick, is 13th in points and 297 points behind. Newgarden's back down in 16th and 323 behind.
Can I just bring up a point on interviews? Can we stop interviewing Newgarden just for the sake of getting him to interview after the criticism? Because Joseph isn't really answering questions, and I get why. But all he says is, this one was wrong place, wrong time, thanks to PPG, whoever it was this weekend. It's like, you're not really getting anything from that. But you know why Fox are doing it. You know why Newgarden's doing it, because everyone's moaning that he's not doing one. But because he's being forced to do one, he's just not giving a good answer because he doesn't want to speak to people.
I also get the impression it's maybe a sponsor thing as well.
Well, by the fact 75% of it was PPG.
Yeah, I mean, refer back to last week's episode and my piece from last week on the DIVEBOMB site if you want to kind of look deeper into the whole Newgarden situation, because we aren't criticising him for this because of really it stems from the whole pylon, which, I mean, I've seen more tweets this weekend again of people kind of just unnecessarily pointing things out to try and paint him in a bad light, which I just continue to not agree with.
I did like his tweet though, of saying Joseph's bad season is his new book. At least
that's going to be good.
Into it.
Yeah, bit of levity. I just touch on Power as well. I mean, he had a little bit of contact with O'Ward, which was, I mean, it was a racing incident. It was going up one of the really tight little sections. I think up, what is it, turn 4, 5, 6,
4, yeah,
that sort of area. So, I mean, he kind of just hung it on the outside, and ultimately on a street track like that, it's bold and it's probably not going to end well. I think Pato had a bit of a moment. To be fair, Pato was very apologetic in the press conference. He said that, well, he was basically worried that it had ended Power's race and said that it's not really the way that he likes to race. But the classic IndyCar street course statement of it got tight. And ultimately he said that he thought it was a racing incident, and that's what you get by going side by side in that sort of area of the track. But he said actually he was going to go and speak to Will and find Will just to make sure he wasn't too pissed off by the whole thing. Once again, a race where all 3 Penskes were caught up in some sort of incident, which must be a third of the races they've been caught up in something, each of the cars in the same race.
Let's work this out. So Mid-Ohio, they all weren't they?
Yep.
Iowa 2, they all were. Toronto, they all were. Gateway, that's 4 in the last 6.
So yeah, I mean that proves my point.
Indy 500. This goes on and on. Let's go to Andretti Global very quickly because they were the quickest, really. They were the pre-weekend favourites as well. Colton Herta took pole. Herta and Kirkwood dominated practice, really. And Kirkwood, for the second time this season, made an error in qualifying, which he thinks cost him the pole. Obviously, did the same in Detroit. Had like quite a big snap coming out of turn 8 on his qualifying lap, which basically ended any chance of him getting pole. So I don't know how Andretti will look at this weekend because they finished 4th from 6th. It was a good weekend for Marcus Ericsson recently, who's obviously been going, good weekend for Marcus Ericsson, who's recently been going through a bit of a difficult patch. I say a bit of a difficult patch, pretty disastrous patch. So he'll be happy with getting a top 5 because the results have been a struggle for him. 4th, 5th, and 6th, I think they'll probably be disappointed with because they had the pace for 1-2, but the strategy just really didn't work out for them because of the caution coming out once Ward. And actually, Ericsson was a benefactor of this as well. Had pitted. Kirkwood also had to give up 3 places because of being out of line on the start, which cost him a little bit. So I don't know how Andretti will feel because they probably should have had a better result, but I'm not really sure what else they could have done bar pit when everybody else did with Herta and Kirkwood. But yeah, they'll be disappointed because I think it's definitely had the pace to get a good result, but it just didn't quite fall their way.
Yeah, I don't feel like they're necessarily really missteps as a team. And I feel like it's the first time in a heck of a long time that we've had a weekend or at least a race where all 3 entries haven't really put a foot wrong in the race. I mean, to be fair, Kirkwood did well to finish 6th because he got spun by Marcus Armstrong in the pits, didn't he? He had it's a very tricky pit lane because it's extremely curved and windy. And Kirkwood was the first box, but it's kind of coming off a curve. And yeah, he got hit by Armstrong. So good job, to be fair, to recover to 6th. It just everything wasn't nothing was falling for him really. And yeah, I feel like it was kind of just circumstance that they got shuffled out in the race because I mean Herta obviously as the race leader wasn't going to pull in early and sacrifice that lead. But obviously like O'Ward, I think it was O'Ward, Ericsson, Siegel that had come in before that first. And McLaughlin before that first caution to come out. Oh yeah, obviously McLaughlin, but he caused it, so it doesn't really count. So before that, but
he came in before the caution came out.
Yeah, but he didn't get the benefit like the other 3 did because he was the one in the wall. But that kind of immediately put Herta on the back foot through nothing that he did wrong. But yeah, there were like practice too. Herta and Kirkwood are in a different stratosphere. I mean, they're both pretty much half a second clear of anyone else, and it's not like it's a particularly long lap. Like it's sub 1 minute come qualifying. And yeah, Herta was just, pole executed perfectly. I mean, to be fair, he had a narrow escape in the first round of qualifying. They had to make a few alterations to the car, but then he really powered on, and that's 3rd pole in 4 years at Toronto, defended his pole from last year. He's been on the front row for every street course race this year. Him and Kirkwood kind of shed some light on the fact that really it's the riding of the bumps that's been the thing that's just made the Andretti cars so good on street courses. Very smooth ride. I mean, there was a lot of talk this weekend about a bump in turn 3 that had kind of appeared over the last year that was extremely aggressive, and they tried to grind it down. And while like Palou had said, it didn't make a difference grinding it down, Herta was like, oh yeah, it made a huge difference. And even on Friday, I think Kirkwood had said like, oh, I didn't feel it that much, as Powell was complaining that he was having a headache. So yeah, that's a good bit of insight into Andretti's cars. But yeah, just I was digging a bit into Herta's year, and I mean, heading into Toronto, he'd only been in the top 5, in the top 10 5 times in 12 races. That's obviously now 6 from 13, but last year he was 13 top 10s. So I feel like the consistency's just evaporated a bit. And obviously, I mentioned earlier the deficit he has to Palou compared to being only 31 points behind last year. And in fact, it went down to the last race, and with 5 races to go this year, he was already out of contention. So yeah, just didn't quite fall their way, as you say. And I don't feel like they did much wrong. It was another strong showing and the best all-round showing they've had in a while. And yeah, they probably will be disappointed to be 4th, 5th, 6th when they could probably have been 1, 2, 3 in another world. But I think particularly Ericsson getting that top 5, I mean, he needed that result because it's been it's been a horrible year. I mean, it says it already that he finished 5th and he's still 19th in points.
This statistic about being out of championship contention, Lundgaard is out of championship contention mathematically, and it feels like it was. Yes, but he's the first out of contention mathematically, and he's 5th in the standings. It's like, what?
That's mad.
It felt like he was the best driver for the first half of the season. Apart from Palou. And yeah, he's out of contention. But anyway, you mentioned about Colton Herta and form not translating year to year. So what better to hear from the man himself when we posed this question to him after taking pole on Saturday. So here's Colton Herta on those thoughts. Thanks, Dave. Hi, Colton. Congratulations on the pole today. It felt like last season you'd made a huge development after a couple of very difficult seasons, but that sort of form hasn't translated as much into this season. So have you been able to diagnose why that is the case?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some ideas, but it's like it's never the same thing. You know, I think we struggled this year on a lot of things, but unfortunately, it's just showing up on Sundays. We haven't been able to perform well, and you know, for everybody, it's super frustrating, and we want to do well, and we're striving to do better every weekend. But you know, it's a tough sport. So you know, any little thing that we drop the ball on, it creates a big impact. So we just need to be heads up on Sunday. And
okay, we'll briefly touch on Alex Palou and Scott Dixon. Alex Palou, the newest friend of the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, which is still quite unbelievable to say, actually. So that is cool that we had Alex Palou on the show last week. If you haven't listened to that already, after you watch Sebastian Bourdais overtake at Long Beach, listen to the Alex Palou episode. We do have to give a huge thanks to Chip Ganassi Racing for sorting that out of us and getting some time with Alex, because that was really insightful. And a few things that is gone into detail about which we haven't really heard from before, especially on sort of the F1 side and what's made him so successful this year. And him almost passing out the Indy 500 is pretty funny as well. So give that episode a listen after this. As I said, it's great to have somebody of his caliber on the show. And it feels like what a nice moment for the podcast that was, having the reigning Indianapolis 500 champion and just Alex Palou on the podcast. So yeah, just wanted to mention that if you haven't listened to it already, it's an awesome episode.
Yeah, I mean, I just add to that point, like, I mean, it's become over the last 2 years since we've been accredited as IndyCar journalists. I know, obviously, we've done all our work virtually from the UK. One day we'll be at a race, hopefully. But it's kind of felt like there's almost been an element of normality that's come to, okay, we attend press conferences, we'll speak to drivers. Like, I remember my first press conference I ever did, and the nerves were pretty substantial. Now it's kind of just like, yeah, I mean, I say it with a lot of gratitude that it's become normal, but I think speaking to Palou was a moment that kind of made us step back and think, like, we started this podcast 2 and a bit years ago from scratch. Like, we did our IndyCar coverage at DIVEBOMB was sporadic as well, and we've really just built it up. And to be at a position where we're interviewing the 3-time champion, the champion-elect, the reigning Indy 500 winner, pretty bloody cool. Just like to say thank you to everyone who's kind of followed us along as well, because I mean, you've made this possible. You've kept us going. So yeah, I appreciate everyone who's been along for the journey with us, and it's only the start.
Yes, you guys listening make it possible. We wouldn't do this if nobody was listening, and you guys listening mean we're able to secure names like this with Alex Palou. So hopefully you enjoy these exclusive insights. We will continue our best to get as many drivers on the show as we possibly can. But it's just a nice little moment to reflect on the events of the last week, having Alex Palou on the podcast. And hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully we get many big names on the show, like we did with Alex Palou. But yeah, nice feel-good moment, a nice reflective moment of sort of how far this podcast has come in the last couple of years, really. I mean, we've lost half our hosts, and we are very different in our knowledge and what we've done over the last 2.5 years. But yeah, I think that was probably the coolest moment of the show so far.
It's really made the kind of graft and grind very much worth it. Some of the grind for little reward in the first place, but even that is all worth it.
It was all good fun.
We enjoy it so much, and like here we are, we're actually doing a rare Sunday recording, but actually as we speak, it is Monday. It's I mean, as I'm saying this part, it is 12:53 in the morning on Monday, but it's all for the love of the game, and we enjoy it so much.
I do have to give a quick apology to Louis Foster, because I said we've halved our host, but I've forgotten he's become the third host of the show. basically. So,
Well,
apologies to you, Louis.
he did tell us that he would tell us to F off if we asked him to come on over this next month. So,
not a great permanent host, I don't think.
obviously, in a jokey manner, we must add.
That's what you think.
Well, yeah.
we'll ask him and see what he says. No, not really. But anyway, without touching on Alex Palou's race, it felt like they sort of got to a point where they didn't know what to do with the strategy. There were so many cautions coming out at rather inconvenient times for Palou that even the best strategists in the field didn't really know what they could salvage out of it. I felt a bit bad because every time Palou was building about a 7-second lead, and you felt like he was about to pit, the caution would come out, and the cycle would just repeat. So,
I mean, he was doing an unreal job. Like, he was building some serious gaps on those primaries, and I mean, like, the cautions kept falling, and I was kind of like, during every caution, like, right, okay, this is bad because he's got rid of his gap. But actually, maybe it's good because it's meaning you can eradicate a stop.
Help in the UK, where Tom Gamer would say this helps Palou, and the Fox Sports broadcast would say this really doesn't help Palou, and
that's nobody had an idea, so that's why, like, once again, and I feel like I say this every time we have just a race that's moderately chaotic. I really don't envy the strategists because what was going on at point? Yeah, honestly, like, so confusing it gets at points.
Yeah, it kind of felt like they just didn't know what to do. So when he ran out of fuel, they were like, pit now for the alternates, we'll get this done out of the way. And you sort of felt for those first 40 laps that him and Dixon, they're going to end up in first, aren't they? The Ganassi way of just doing something different and they still win. It's been what Palou's entire season's been like. He's doing something different and he's still winning. But
it feels like every race at the moment, those two are ending up converging on strategy.
Yeah, those two are always doing something really weird and wacky at the minute. But yeah, for some reason, just didn't work out. I wanted to say, Palou and Dixon feel glued together in the last about 4 or 5 races. Ever since Road America, they've basically just been the same car.
Pretty much.
Extension of each other. But yeah,
I think what I would say, I think the mistake started from Palou starting on the primaries. I mean, I think it was only him and maybe Foster in the top 14, I think it was, that actually started on the primes. And yeah, Palou did say, I think I alluded to this earlier in his Fox interview, that he was the one who made the decision. So the lesson from this is never trust the driver.
Who made the decision in Road America? Was that him or was that Barry Bonza?
I think it's a rarity that Palou is able to override.
He's never doing it again after this, is he?
It was Road America where they were kind of a bit uncertain as to what tyre to start on. But ultimately, I can't remember what they decided, but whatever it was, it worked. Well, I think they felt it didn't work out, but they still won the race anyway. They did win the race, did they, Road America?
Yes, they did win the race.
Of course they won the race. If in doubt, say Palou won the race.
Well, you've got an over 50% chance this season of someone getting it right.
It felt like the first time this season that Palou's actually kind of been on the back foot. Like, everything that was happening just kind of felt like, well, it could be good for him, but it probably isn't. And yeah, ultimately, it was that decision just to start on the primaries and be on that different strategy to the rest of the leaders that just screwed them over a bit, to be honest. I mean, he then got stuck down in the teens, didn't he? Dixon actually overcut him after the final stop, and I mean, Palou was one of the people caught up in Lundgaard's absolute craziness.
Lundgaard was passing him around a bit, wasn't he?
And then I
don't understand how Power overtook Palou at the end, because Palou was ahead and it felt like Powers would be on damage limitation after he rammed us out into the wall. I think Palou might have been on a fuel save because he stopped pretty much as soon as he could to have a chance to make it. I think it was lap 55. You would just about be able to make it home. Lap 54, probably not. And Palou stopped for his final stop as early as possible. So maybe he was in a bit of fuel save mode. I think after Lundgaard's madness, he decided he needed to tone it down a little bit. Because Lundgaard hit the barrier by himself. And that's the first time I thought, oh, here we go. Another Robert McLaren trying to screw over O'Ward's massive lead. Yeah. Because Rosenqvist was the same for a bit, wasn't he? Rosenqvist was just everywhere, making contact with everything.
He had a damaged front wing for the entire race, pretty much, Rosenqvist. Just one more point I would make on Palou as well. I feel like he's just appearing on the front row now every week, and it's just like not even a surprise because I know qualifying, if there was anything you could fault him for, you could fault him for the fact he wasn't the quickest in the field. And now I think with Herta is probably the quickest on raw pace on a road or street course. He started in the top 3. 8 times in 13 races this season. But this was an inverse of normal Toronto for Palou, because he hadn't actually qualified any better than 15th, and he hadn't finished any worse than 6th. But here he qualifies second and finishes 12th. So,
talking of inverse of things, I was going to bring this up. The Armstrong ability is the complete opposite of what you would never expect him to be in the top 10, and he appears there. And this weekend we expected him to be in the top 10 because he qualified really well and was quick. And he didn't end up in the top 10. So
yeah,
Armstrong, you always need to expect the inverse of what you actually think.
Yeah, I'm still pretty impressed with him though. Like, I mean, he jumped up to second at the start. I know he came under pressure from Kirkwood, then kind of the cautions happened. Kirkwood had to drop those positions. But I mean, that was a very impressive qualifying performance. I think that was his joint best, actually. And ultimately, his race was undone, wasn't it, by the drive-through for spinning Kirkwood in the pits. And he was the one that Seal ran into, wasn't he, during the Abel Newgarden moment. But another impressive weekend, I thought, for Armstrong.
We'll quickly go over the cautions. We've got over McLaughlin. Rasmussen ran out of luck, I think, really. Something about the Scandinavians this weekend, wasn't it? They're all madmen, weren't they? I mean, Rasmussen's a madman wherever he goes, but he just gets away with it. But at this time, he didn't quite. So,
yeah, I mean, that was contact with power, but that was in that mad phase where VeeKay and Simpson were kind of just moving chicanes on their alternates, which was, yeah, I mean, going back to that, at the time I thought, like, what are you doing? But I mean, it was a masterstroke, evidently, in the end. But that was kind of, I think there was a bit of frantic racing that was a result of that, and I think the caution was a bit of a product of that. And I mean, Simpson ended up, and Rasmussen ended up, I mean, I think he was only a couple of laps down, actually, in the end. I think there must have been a little bit of suspension damage, but it ultimately looked like it was more puncture than anything, actually, from the wall contact.
And then his teammate, Alexander Rossi, had an incident about 15 laps later, which was, Fox have gone into this in great detail, but he hit the wall on the exit of turn 11, and the concrete didn't quite line up the next block, and he sort of hit it where the concrete blocks were joined next to each other, and as one didn't quite line up the other one, it basically just sheared his right rear tyre completely, which was a shame, because normally you'd get away with that, but not today.
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like it in IndyCar, really, because it properly like ripped that right corner. I mean, there was debris going everywhere until he kind of came to, I think he stopped himself in the turn 1 runoff, didn't he? But yeah, bizarre. Like, just very unlucky, because you usually can kind of flirt with those margins. Got punished, unfortunately.
We'll do the running order. So it was Award, VeeKay and Simpson, your feel-good podium, ahead of Herta, Ericsson and Kirkwood. Graham Rahal was 7th, ahead of Callum Ilott. 2 pretty good weekends for them. I've got a feeling they might be coming up in Unsung Heroes in a little bit. But
yeah.
Ilott's best result of the season. Rahal's best result of the season as well, actually, isn't it? So no, it's not. You got 6th in the GP. That's a good weekend nonetheless.
Yeah, I feel like they're the only 2 results Rahal's really had all season.
The only top 10s he's had.
Yeah, I feel like to be honest, I feel like he kind of deserved more. He's been there or thereabouts, especially in qualifying. I mean, another fast 6 on a street course. I think last year it felt like RLL made a bit of a regression on street courses, and this year they've really bounced back again. Obviously, Lundgaard got his win in 23 in Toronto, but I don't know. It kind of felt like, it felt like they made a regression full stop last year, and they're kind of back to where it felt like they were beforehand. I know championship positions don't really reflect that. Mostly because they've not really been converting in races, and they've really struggled on race pace. But raw pace again, I mean, it feels like Rahal and Foster are now consistent features in the Fast 12. Foster qualified 7th. I think he had some wall contact. Did it end his day in the end, actually? I think it might have.
23 laps down, so...
yeah, that ended his day. It looked like it was just a toe link, but maybe it's a bit more than that. I don't think we ever saw how that happened, to be honest. But yeah, very quick in qualifying, and finally, I think it's going to be a relief for Rahal that he's got a race result from that. And Ilott, I mean, that's Prema's best result, right?
Yes.
A couple of top 10s for Schwartzman on ovals, but I mean, this is their best overall, best road and street course. And I mean, I think it was signs from quite early on. I think Ilott he finished 6th in opening practice, and then qualifying was really, really strong. I think he very comfortably made the Fast 12, actually. I think that's the second time he has done so in the last few rounds on running street courses. But I had an absolutely hilarious interview with him where, I mean, he was really angry when he got out of the car, and then he was interviewed, and he was basically just bemoaning the fact that Muppets were going off at turn 8 and causing yellows, and
everyone on Twitter went crazy about this, and I was like, "This is just our terminology."
It's brilliantly British, isn't it? Like, he was frustrated, but also he didn't cross the line, and it was actually quite a lovable little interview. I thought I thought it was great.
We had David Malukas in 9th ahead of Scott Dixon in 10th. Power was 11th ahead of Palou, with Lundgaard somehow ending up in the 13th and not out of the race after his little spree. We then had Armstrong, Daly, and Schwartzman, who were on the lead lap, followed by Rob, who was a lap down, Siegel and Rosenqvist, who crashed to each other at the end, followed by Rasmussen, who, as we mentioned, crashed, Foster, who crashed, Devin DiFrancesco, who sort of crashed, Abel, who crashed, Newgarden, who crashed, Rossi, who crashed, McLaughlin, who crashed, and Ferrucci, who crashed in practice, because we didn't even speak about that. He obviously missed the race because obviously warm-up was a bit of a damp track from rain overnight, and Ferrucci said he left the hybrid on, which gave him a bit too much overspeed into a corner, hit the wall, and the team thought they wouldn't bother repairing the car in time. So that's a rare mistake from Ferrucci. We don't see many errors from him, especially of that magnitude. So that was a rare one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was a big hit. I mean, he absolutely slammed the turn 7 wall. Like, he wasn't even close to making the corner, and then kind of spun around and hit the turn 8 tyres in the runoff, and basically all 4 corners ended up being damaged. And I mean, it happened with like 2 minutes to go in warm up. I mean, that's 3 hours until the cars need to be in the pits and kind of gearing up to go for the race. So would have been a massive scramble. I think they were getting a backup tub repaired, but ultimately they just weren't going to be able to either prep that or repair the car in time, at least to a quality where they could be competitive. I know Ferrucci was also seen icing his hand. He interviewed Fox, said it was a bit banged up. I think he might have had an X-ray. It wasn't broken or anything, no serious injury, but maybe that was also a bit of a factor if he was feeling a little bit sore. But yeah, I don't know, maybe overstepping the mark really on a wet, kind of a wet, dry track. No real need to risk running, at least running hard in that session. I know Ganassi sat that out full stop and didn't really harm them too much. Maybe that's why Palou and Dixon ended up where they ended up. But certainly Kyffin Simpson needs to run that session. Maybe he'll never run warm up again. But yeah, shame that, because Ferrucci was obviously top 10 in points. So he's dropped down. I think he's only dropped down to 12th, maybe.
Yes, it's 12th.
So not catastrophe. I mean, he's still in the picture, but I mean, disappointing from his side. But I mean, Malukas actually probably worth mentioning. He had a bit of an inspired drive late on, because I mean, he was up in 3rd, but always was going to have to stop in that kind of final exchange of laps. But had a bit of a blunder on that stop. Looked like a tyre was a bit loose. They had to kind of stop and re-secure it, and still managed to make his way up to 9th. And yeah, probably could have been even maybe in the mix with those Andrettis if it wasn't for that bit of a bobble.
Okay, unsung hero. I usually start this off, so I'll let you do it this week.
Can we officially name this the Rinus VeeKay Award?
Well, no, because he's not unsung at the minute. He wasn't unsung this week. Yeah, he wasn't unsung last week.
Because he was the only winner earlier in the year. I mean, it's one of two, isn't it, really? I'm going to go for Ilott.
And you're forcing me to go for Rahal? No, yeah. I'm not. I'm going to go for Ericsson instead.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I mean, he's on the same strategy as O'Ward, and it was a much-needed result. I feel like he qualified not as good as the other two, but he qualified okay. And it was overall a much cleaner weekend than what we've seen from him this season. So I'm actually going to go different.
Yeah, I think Ilott just purely because he needs his plaudits, and I think we're finally seeing steps forward from Prema on road and street courses, rather than, quite strangely, them being stronger on the tracks that they've never seen anything like in terms of the ovals. But yeah, shout out Rahal as well, because he's quietly had a very strong weekend.
Top 3 drivers of the weekend. This is difficult. Very difficult, this one, I think.
Yeah, that is hard.
For me, Hurt is still my P1, and I still think Kirkwood, naturally, maybe we're staying qualifying. I'll actually probably go Hurt to P1, O'Ward P2, Kirkwood P3.
I think, to be fair, Kirkwood didn't really make a mistake in the race, though, did he? Because that was Armstrong running into him.
Well, apart from being out of line at the start.
Yeah, that's true. I will go for. This is hard.
This is a hard one. Yeah, there's no like clear cut P1 this week, like there is a lot of other weeks.
Yeah, I think Herta probably purely for the fact that he was pretty I know, to be fair, first practice wasn't great, but they found something. To get pole, not really put a foot wrong in the race, just got a bit unlucky, I think.
Maybe podium
maybe could have got Simpson, if it wasn't for the caution. So I think I will go Herta first. I will go Award second. I'll probably go VeeKay third.
We knew that was going to happen.
I just think, I think Kirkwood's weekend was just a tiny bit too scruffy.
And then the funny moments, this was the old timer last year. Last year was the goat for this because we had Kanan's Porsche tweet, we had Chip Ganassi's, this is the worst ever qualifying tweet. We had the Aaron McLaren Spider-Man meme for the number 6 car. We had McLaughlin's post-race tweets after that contact with Power. And that's only the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Because was it McLaughlin did last year? Was that really sarcastic thumbs up?
Yeah, he got because Power completely rammed him into the wall, and he just I think he just went on the track and applauded him or something.
Listen to this episode last year for the funny moments because these are really you've got a lot of things to listen to after this episode, don't you? But this was also the episode last year where we were in 3 different continents because I was sat in some table in Istanbul.
Yeah, I was in the hottest kitchen ever in Mallorca.
The one that stands out to me is Devin DiFrancesco getting a pool noodle submerged into his car in practice. That was a bit of a strange one. It was like they're filling up their camera holes with, I guess, to stop the rigid edges where you can cut yourself with this pool noodle stuff, and it flew off and hit DiFrancesco's mirror, which was amusing.
Yeah, that was on my list. I also had. Apparently, the pace car had an issue.
Yes, I saw it below there.
The caution. They had to replace the pace car because it had a power issue. Which was interesting. There was a hilarious moment in first practice. Well, almost wasn't hilarious because O'Ward nearly went straight into McLaughlin, but 3 cars in perfect succession ended up in the runoff. I think it was McLaughlin, and he gets spun around, and Ferrucci follows exactly the same path. And then just as McLaughlin's about to get going, O'Ward ends up in the runoff.
McLaughlin drives forward to let O'Ward go behind him, which is amusing.
So that was amusing. How
many times was O'Ward in that runoff, by the way, over the course of practice? It must have been about 6 times.
O'Ward, Herta, and Ferrucci felt like they were in it loads. I think Ilot's Muppets interview, when he was clearly quite angry, but was also being pretty British and comedic about it all, that's also up there for this weekend's funny moments.
It's not really funny, but the Kirkwood and Herta deliveries being the exact same
that's just annoying.
Yeah, stop doing it. Who was the other week who were getting really annoyed about being the same? There was somebody. I can't remember who it was. There's somebody of the week who we were moaning about looking far too similar, and I can't remember who it was. The video you saw at the start, listeners/viewers, might be pretty amusing. A little personalised note from Pato towards me. The reason why I'm not there is that I'm 3,600 miles away, and it costs probably 1.5k in flights plus accommodation, and I'm not spending that much for 3 days.
Yeah, we're both in the same position. We've got an ocean between us and the entire IndyCar calendar, unfortunately. What takes the cake then for the funny moment, do we think?
Well, the thing is, any of the ones we had last year would easily take the top spot this year, but it's not even close, really. I did quite like the spotters on top of the hotel, but that's not particularly funny.
I think it's got to be the pool noodle just for the sheer randomness of it, because no one quite knew where it had come from initially. The cameras started showing the massive hotel for some reason. I don't know if it would have come.
Yeah, and there was a theory someone had dropped the pool noodle out of the pool and it landed on the track.
What pool?
Genuinely, these people go on those ridiculous theories in the broadcast. It's utterly hilarious. Anyway, we should probably move on to some predictions. Don't you think?
Oh gosh, I forgot we have another race coming.
Well, no, we've got to review this week's predictions, so I need to work them out, and I'll let you know once I've got them. Okay, podium predictor tournament this weekend. It's a good one. You ready for this, listeners? So, I'm going to do this a bit differently to how I usually do. So, the total overall score of everybody combined, you can divide this by 7 to work out the average per player of the podium predictor tournament. The total overall score for this week was 0. Nobody scored a point this week.
I think that's the first time that's ever happened.
I think that definitely is the first time it happened. Everyone put a combination of Herta, Palou, Dixon, Kirkwood, and Lundgaard. Between the 7 people, everyone had those 5 drivers, at least in some order. Hence, every single person who participated got 0 this week. That's a collective embarrassment.
Oh my word.
So
Brilliant.
The standings do not change since we last spoke to you last week. They were exactly the same. That is the first time that's ever happened. Fast 6 predictor tournament, I hope went a little bit better. Right, so Fast 6 was Herta, who both put. It was Palou, who both put. Kirkwood, who both put. So that was 3 for 3 there. We both put Lundgaard, but he wasn't in there as well. You put McLaughlin and you put Malukas, neither of whom made it. And I put Rosenqvist and I put Dixon, neither of whom made it. It was obviously Rahal made it in 5th, and we had Armstrong there as well. So 3 apiece for us this week, and we have yet another race next week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. This really doesn't stop the streak. We need like a relaxing week just to reflect on what's happened. We're not getting that chance in a minute. But anyway, we have another Fast 6 to do, so we'll be back with you once again for yet another prediction shortly. Yeah, I've got my 6. I'm not sure I actually like it this week, but hey.
I do quite like mine this week, actually.
Okay, well, I'd be stunned if you didn't put Alex Palou.
I put Alex Palou, especially considering he was on pole last year.
Yeah, this is Herta's house, so I've gone for Colton.
I have as well.
Kyle, Kirkwood.
Yep.
The 3 staples at the minute, really, isn't it? I've gone Will Power this week.
I've not actually. Penske didn't have a great qualifying there last year.
Yeah, but I do remember him doing well a couple of years ago. So, and he's in good quality. He's in decent qualifying form actually. His Power. I've gone for a real risk and gone New Garden as well, which I don't actually fully like. I actually think I probably should have gone for Maya Shank, but I'll stick with New Garden.
Yeah, I've gone double Maya Shank.
Yeah, probably made a mistake on that one. Anyway, I've gone Lundgaard to round up mine.
I've gone Foster.
Oh, that's a very good shout.
I've actually not predicted him yet, so
that's a good idea. Yeah,
Lundgaard past 6 last year, so
yeah, that's my basis. I actually regret. I say this now, and New Goblin are big in the Fast 6. He won't, but anyway, that's predictions for this week. Only 3 the same, so we're getting a lot better than we were previously at the start of the year, which is encouraging. We've never predicted 6 all the same. Though I feel like we've been close, but we've never predicted 6 all the same.
Yeah, it's true. I don't think we have we?
No, I don't believe we have. Final thought on Toronto, by the way, I know you mentioned this earlier. This alternate tyre scheme is absolutely shocking. Like every street course, wow, the tyre goes off after 2 laps. And it just creates this ridiculous racing where people just start falling like a stone through the order and just waste everybody's... Like, I hate the fact there's a tyre and the sole purpose of that tyre is to be on it for as little as possible without damaging your race. It's just a stupid concept. Dixon got another engine penalty, and we discussed this earlier on in the season about him having that the failure basically 4 laps into Sebring. But do you not think the engine pool is just too low, considering like 80% of the field end up getting a penalty at some point during the season?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
I find it really counterintuitive, and because by the end of the season, you got like 9 cars a race taking an engine penalty because there's just not enough in the pool, and then there's now too many failures to make it fair. So if you've got one surplus, so I guess the counter argument will be it costs more for Chevrolet, Honda because they have to make an extra 13 engines each or whatever. But yeah, I guess that's the reason they don't do it. But they all take that extra engine anyway, so
yeah, that's the point. Like, I imagine it is a cost thing, but when you do have most of the field taking engines anyway, why penalise them for it? Because they're all doing it.
It means if you're someone like Dixon, and you do the failure at the start of the season, it's okay, well, you can still survive and fall for the rest of the year. So anyway, stupid rule, but anyway, we're going to let that degrade from what's been a fun weekend. 2 of our favourites on the podium, as well as a podcast friend in third, which is very, very feel-good podium. Nice race. And yeah, we keep the ball rolling. We are in Laguna Seca next week. And yeah, and then we've got 3 races to go, and we'll be
Don't say it.
Oh, it's the elephant in the room, isn't it, for all these listeners? So,
How are we
sorry.
like off-seasoning is in like 2 months?
Let's end it there. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.